DeSantis. Now, this guy is a fascinating character. And I've been looking at his body. I've been trying to find his past. And what it looks like is his past has been scrubbed very well from the internet. And for me, that is a little bit scary. And it's a little bit, okay, cool. This is the guy who's setting himself up for presidency, right? So I'm sure people will come out of the woodwork to try and either tarnish his reputation or point out the truth or whatever's happened in his past. But right now, this guy, in the framing of Characterology, he's a rigid psychopath. And a rigid psychopath is exceptionally good at execution of tasks, execution of policy, execution of things where the end justifies the means. So when I look at this guy's life, like I see someone who's been set up to excel. And even in university, he was in the same fraternity as ex-presidents like George Bush, Gerald Ford, and Theodore Roosevelt. And what I'm seeing here is a man who is out to get presidency. And what I also see is someone who is deeply sad and cold, like emotionally cold. He can hold the dead glaze of someone who will move you or annihilate you if you threaten his goals. And part of me respects that. Like, this guy is served in the military. He's someone who's upheld law. He's someone who has made decisions in the face of conspiracy in regards to some of the lockdown restrictions. Like, he opposed a lot of what was going on. And to do that, to stand in the face of the status quo, takes a set of balls that a lot of men would not go through, right? So this guy is ruthless to a T in that he holds his own opinions strong. And I love that. I deeply respect this. In that, this is the perfect polish to put someone in the presidency who would back the military-industrial complex. And for those of you that don't know what the military-industrial complex is, go and have a look, and you can pass your own judgments on that. However, this guy he's highly decorated. He's someone who was in the service for from 2004 to 2019, right? Yale, Harvard, 3 kids. He's someone who has had a lifelong career of being watched. Having someone having their eye on him. And for a rigid, this can be particularly taxing because there's no space to let loose. So what might show up is some of his earlier days when he was in this fraternity. I mean, letting loose, drinking. What else might show up? There could be, but umming and ahhing, there could be some homosexual tendency there that's not being mentioned because he's a conservative. And rigids are quite common, and rigids are prone to homosexuality and being ashamed of it. They don't want to talk about it. Right? They might have homosexual tendencies, but they don't want to express it because it means that whatever their internal framework of what it means to be something, and this is the classic case of the rigids, they need to be something, and to be improper goes against every fiber of their being. And in that, they can hold back. So their authentic reaction, it can get stuck and they will hold back. They can have a deep lack of empathy. So what you'll see here is he will be calculating. And you might seem like he cares about you, but what really is there is calculation. It's not empathy, because it is cold. If you look at his eyes, they're cold. And in that, in the eyes, there can also be an ocular, I've mentioned this before in other videos, an ocular block where you can't really feel him. They kind of died inside a little bit, right? But in order to restore that, he'll need to connect to his heart. And to connect to his heart, he might see a lifetime of doing things out of integrity. And he's justified it internally because that's what rigids do. They work out in a very early age, they're denied who they really are at the core. So they become something to be successful. They become something else so they can be loved. Other rigids are like Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, Tupac was also another rigid. So these individuals can lack a level of self-awareness when it comes to the emotional side of things. They learn how to live life by a formula. They know how to get up, they know how to do this, they know how to do X, they know how to do Y. But when it comes to acting authentically, like what's really going on for them, there can be a bit of a, I don't know. And that would be his Achilles heel. If there's a lot of emotion that comes up for him, if like multiple people that he loves die or get hurt or something, that would be where the rigid can really collapse in on themselves. And that rigids must win. They must win at any cost, and humiliation is terrifying for them. So if they can avoid humiliation in some way, that's what they'll aim for, especially because he's a psychopathic rigid. Public humiliation is a big one, right? And launch his candidacy. Twitter crashed, right? And then he got all this barrage of all this public humiliation. Right? Oh, it didn't work. This, DeSantis, like false start. Like that's the worst thing for a rigid and a psychopath, because their expectation, like all the checks and balances, needing to rely on somebody else to execute, his marketing team saying, no, we'll do this Twitter thing. You're about big tech, I'm not censorship, all that kind of stuff. What's scary in all of this is because DeSantis has ties to the military, like the military in a heartbeat can turn all this stuff off. So his allegiance to the military might be greater than his allegiance to the people, because the military gets stuff done. And for the most part, the population's stupid, right? The military knows. The military has more information on the populace than the populace has on the populace, right? And the military's got all the backdoor channels to filter all the metadata that you need in order to make strategic decisions. So it'll be interesting in the realms of transparency, like how much is he going to expose with the military? I mean, even for him, like it looks like some of his military history has been scrubbed. I mean, he was in Guantanamo Bay. So for those of you that know about Guantanamo Bay, like go check it out. Go look at some of the atrocities that happened there. And not all that stuff would have been documented. And this is where the rigid psychopath is fucking scary. Because if you look at World War II and who was on Hitler's team, psychopathic rigids. Even Hitler was a psychopathic rigid. And if you can't install heart, empathy into a rigid psychopath, they're relentless. The end justifies the means. And what might also show up here in his love life is he might love his partner, but then isn't really sexually interested in her, or vice versa. He might physically attract his partner, but doesn't really love her. And this can be a really painful injury for a rigid, especially a rigid psychopath, because now he needs to keep up the show for the conservatives, right? There might be something going on in their relationship and it'll be happy smiles and all this, but deep down there's a longing that he's missing. There's something missing in his sexuality that he wants, and it could be something that's gay. It could be something else, but that will be another Achilles heel for him, that who he is at the core is a performance. Like it's a performance. Sorry, no. Who he is at the core is missing. It's this tired, scared, exhausted little child who's trying to keep everything propped up. Oh, this is the performance. I've got to be this. Look at all the accolades I've got. Look at all the achievements I've got. And he's got to maintain it. And the fault of the psychopath is lying, and the fault of the achiever is pride. So between those two, being able to own mistakes, being able to own errors, hard, very hard. And because of the weight of public opinion and his responsibility to the US and his family, it's going to really take its toll on a rigid. Like for me, I'm rigid, right? I've got rigid psychopathic traits too. My defense is rigid psychopath. And for me, knowing that pressure, knowing what that pressure feels like, and then going to extremes in order to get my goals met. I've got my vision board over there. Like knowing that there's been times in my life, particularly in my corporate career, where the end justifies the means. And while I was mentored on learning all of this characterology and character analysis, the rigid psychopath, the heart reconnecting that's required takes choice. Because a rigid psychopath can go to the end of their life not connected to their heart. They can go into battle not connected to their heart. And this is the thing with the end justifies the means of the rigid, is that they will justify war. They will justify war based on the information. Their instinctual nature might say, no, don't do that. Don't do that. We can talk this through. It's just going to take someone to fall on their sword. It's going to take someone to be transparent. It's going to take someone to swallow their pride. And they will choose war. So, while I'm speaking to this and making this aware, there's always a choice. And in my aim for a lot of these analysis that I do, it's to make the unconscious conscious through structure. And characterology is a structure that can predict a person's behavior based on their body type. It's very powerful technology, and it can be used to hold compassion for someone. So if you look at DeSantis, like if you're watching this and you hate DeSantis or you hate Republicans or whatever, you can look at this with compassion and you can say, look, hey, if you actually want a president or someone who is going to operate the world, and the US is effectively operating for all of us. We can try and deny it. I live in Australia, so another part of the world, and they have no effect on us. They do have an impact on us. Who the president becomes has an impact on us. So if you want to look at a leader and go, how can you make a leader better, right? The rigid psychopath makes an incredible leader. And to kick that up a notch, to make him humane, connected to the people, requires a connection to the heart. And that process, in order for a rigid to get there, he needs to face vulnerability and his innocence. His innocence, that who he was as a child needed to grow up. Who he was as a child needed to grow up very fast and took on adult responsibilities at an early age. And if you're someone who's watching this and can feel that, this is what he is feeling. He grew up from a very early age. He didn't have a childhood, didn't know how to play, wasn't allowed to play, was judged for playing, was condemned for playing. So you go into university with the same things. You try and use alcohol, other things, return to that feeling, return to that sensation. But the rigid's already kicked in. The rigid's all about achievement, secrecy, avoiding humiliation, pride. So if you're surrounded by people that are also rigids, which would be quite common in that fraternity, all of them conspire to make sure that they all keep the secret. They all protect the pride. They all avoid humiliation. Unless it's strategic. Rigids love teaming up and humiliating for strategic reasons. So, in all of this, I'm not interviewing DeSantis. His history has been scrubbed. I cannot find anything specifically about his past. His wiki page looks like it's been whitewashed to make him look amazing. So someone's been doing their job. I gotta look at the history. Someone's gone back and edited 27th of May, wow, 23rd of May, 2023, like hundreds of edits on his wiki, right? The oldest. Let's click on the oldest version here on his wiki. 2018, 2012. So we can see here that I would assert that this has been a long time in the running. Long plan, long term. Just want to find something in here that I can go have a look at. Florida Army, 2018. So what I see here is his candidacy, and prepping for this has been a long time in the running. And if I was part of the military industrial complex, this is the kind of guy I would insert. Genius, absolute genius. And like I said, I'm not interviewing him. So all of this is based on the images that I have available, and he would need to either confirm or deny. I could be full of shit right here. So what I'm doing is using the technology that I know to predict the man that I see in front of me. And I wouldn't trust him to babysit my kid. I wouldn't trust him to devise policy that was in my best interests. I wouldn't trust him if he promised that he had the people's best interests, because he knows that the people are dumb. He knows that they're ignorant. He knows that they're lazy. He knows that they are indifferent. This is a man with a purpose. This is a man with a vision, and he will carry it out. And in that, I applaud him. I think this is exactly this is the leader that everybody secretly wants, because if you don't take care of your life, if you don't own your life, if you're not committed or devoted to anything, you crave to be a slave. People that don't want to take responsibility to create their freedom want to be enslaved. They want to be taken care of by Big Daddy. And DeSantis is the king of kings of Big Daddies. So if he scares you, if there's something that feels a little bit off about him to you, it's because he's not connected to his heart. So he looks polished on the outside, very polished. On the inside, he's looking to be loved for who he really is. So if you can feel that in you, if you're someone who has felt like you have not been able to be loved for who you really are, if you're someone who lacks spontaneity, if you're someone who is also committed to excellence, maybe if you are, you probably wouldn't be watching this. Probably doing something else, probably creating your life, like Alex Hormozy doing something, or fishing, or off at the gym. So if you're someone who wants to help create leaders that are connected to their heart and value the people, value the place of military, can see all of the puzzle pieces, see all of the chessboard, and they're able to be connected to their heart at the same time, then Characterology is an exceptional tool to use. And I use this in my work with clients, and it has guided me time and time again into inner teenager, inner child injuries that stop them in life, that stop them from living the life that they want, that stop them in relationships, that I can help them stop the sabotage. But these instinct injuries that occur from childhood, they're all quite clearly laid out for me when I look at someone's body. And they're a map. I'll ask them, does this X mark the spot? And they will either answer yes or no. And sometimes it's a maybe. And sometimes that no becomes a yes later. Because when you ask those questions, when you're interrogating someone like this, defenses can come up. Protectors can come up. It's like, no, I don't want to look at that right now, because it touches on a core injury of identity. And for someone who's like DeSantis, who has become a rigid, then looking at who they really are is painful, because they need to rediscover that who they've become is far removed from where they started as a child. Because growing up really fast puts pressure on you that will eventually crumble unless you have pillars of people around you, other psychopathic rigids, that support you in your goal. Because they will say, don't look at that. Don't be humble. Don't look at that. Because his pride is caught up with all the other rigids' pride. And they can invade countries fully justified. And they can cover up their tracks very easily. Because when pride's at stake, money and morality is not included.